Hi guys, my name is Piyush Maheswari. I work as an Android engineer at Zomato, and I'm here to talk about navigation components. So, what is navigation? Navigation refers to the interactions that allow users to navigate across, into, and back out from the different pieces of content within your app. We generally do that using intent to travel between activities and fragment transactions to navigate between fragments. And writing these fragment transactions and handling the backstack takes a certain amount of effort. If you don't implement it in the right way, we can face a major issue of illegal state exception that can occur. To simplify these, we have navigation components. The navigation components is a set of libraries, a plugin, and tooling that simplifies Android navigation. It helps you to manage navigation, fragment transactions, backstack animations, and most importantly, deep linking. So there are some terminologies that are involved. One is the navhost fragment, which is an empty container that displays destinations from your navigation graph. It's basically an area within your layout for self-contained navigation to occur. Next, we have nav controller. This orchestrates the swapping of destination content in the nav host as users move through the app. Each nav host has one nav controller. We'll look into these when I show an example. Next, we have navigation graph. It's a new XML resource file that defines all possible paths a user can take through an app. It basically shows visually all the destinations that can be reached from given destination. Destinations are all content areas in your app where we can mention the end screen ID. We'll look into all these when let's start. How do we implement this in a project? So we need to add these dependencies. Some are for Jetpack Compose if you're using, some is for testing. Then there's feature module support, and then there's Kotlin and Java language implementation. So let's make a simple project. We have a main activity which has this as the XML file. So basically, there's nothing new, just this fragment which is getting added, and this activity is the one which is hosting the navigation graph. So we need to concentrate only on these three things as of now. Name is the most important, and we have to declare the nav host fragment here. This just shows that this activity will host the navigation graph. And then there's default nav host. So there can be multiple nav hosts. This is a boolean which tells us that which is the default one. The third one is the nav graph, which just basically tells you which navigation graph are we referring to in this case. And to make a navigation graph, it's simple. We just need to go to resource manager and create a new navigation graph. This will be the design of the navigation graph, mynav.xml. So in this screen, we can see that there's a home button made that shows us the starting destination of the navigation graph, and it should be a fixed one. And these arrows, which you can drag and drop on two fragments and activities, these are called actions, with which we associate all the deep linking safeguards or anything else. So this design gets converted to this code. It's a lot of code. Let's break down this code. Uh, so for the first fragment, it will be same for the second fragment too. So for the first fragment, we can see that there's the fragment one, and then there's this action tag, which has ID, which is the action ID with which we'll refer to this action. Then there's destination, which will have the ID of the destination in which we are going. Then there's enter anim, exit anim, pop enter anim, pop exit anim. So the main difference between enter and pop enter is that enter happens when you're navigating to this fragment. Enter anim is the animation which will happen when you're entering this fragment, and pop enter would be the one which will happen when you're navigating backwards, and similarly for exit and pop exit. So let's look at code of the first fragment. Like as we saw, this was the design. It's just two text views in both the fragments. So let's see the code for the first fragment. There's nothing there. We just need to call the find nav controller, which you will find everywhere whenever there's navigation involved. So the find nav controller helps you to get the reference to the navigation graph. So in this case, we have this view, and this navigation will find the navigation graph associated with it, and then we call the navigate function and pass that ID of the action, which is action first fragment to second fragment. And similarly, we have second fragment, which has another text view on clicking on which we'll come back to the first fragment. So the action is action second fragment to first fragment. So like that's the most basic implementation of navigation components. Like on clicking of one, we go to two, and on clicking on two, we come back to one. And all those animations which you are seeing is the pop enter and enter simultaneously. If even if you remove one of the animations, you will see this disrupted. You can check that case. So let's look at one interesting case. So what happens generally is we have a login screen in our app, and we want the users to go through that screen to the home screen. So for example, so what you want for a user is not to come back to the login screen after they have login into the app. So like for example, in this case, if we make the first fragment as the login page and second fragment as the home page of our app, if we are entering the home page, we don't want the users to press back button and go back to the login page. So how do we do this using navigation components? We have these two options, which are a pop-up to and pop-up to inclusive. Pop-up to is what you want to happen when you press the back button. So in this case, we added this code in the first fragment, and the first fragment action, and we mentioned it here that we'll pop up to the first fragment. And pop up to inclusive is boolean, which tells whether we should include the present fragment or not. So in this case, since there are only two fragments, we'll include this, and this will be true. And if you try this, uh, and on pressing of back button from the second fragment, you'll exit from the app. So next, we see how do we send data from one fragment to another. There are two options. One is using bundle, and the other is using safe arguments, which is a Gradle plugin for navigation components to pass data between destinations. So let's look at the example of sending data using bundle. So it's the same code. It's just that now we are passing the data to the second fragment. So we have made a bundle and put the integer 20 there and associated it with integer ID, and we have passed that bundle. So basically in the navigate function, as a second parameter, we pass this bundle so that it gets received there. And similarly in the second fragment, we'll get the arguments uh, the similar way we used without navigation components, like the get arguments function of fragment class. We can get that bundle and display the data. So the better option is sending data using safe args. So the navigation components has a Gradle plugin called SafeArgs that generates simple object and builder classes for tight safe access to arguments specified for destinations and actions. You'll have to add some plugins. There's one plugin for the project Gradle file, and there's one plugin for the app Gradle file. So let's see how do we use this SafeArgs to pass data from first fragment to the second fragment. So in the first, so we add this argument tag in the fragment which is going to receive the data. So in this case, it's the second fragment. So here we include this tag argument which has name, default value, and arg type. Name is the name. I've given it number. We'll use this to refer to this argument, and then there's default value. If no value has been passed, we'll like this will automatically pass 99 to the next fragment. And there's arg type. In this case, it's an integer, but we can have custom types too. For example, like if you're dealing with an application in which you're passing money and you want to use a data class for that, so you can put that arg type as the package name and then the money data class. So next we'll see how do we actually send it using SafeArgs. So So what happens is that after you declare the arguments, you'll have to rebuild the project, and some files will be generated using safeargs, which internally handle the bundle implementation. So in this case, there will be three files which will be generated. First will be first fragment directions, then there's second fragment directions, and then there's second fragment args. So in this case, for the first fragment, we use first fragment directions, and this has a function which is action first fragment to second fragment, and we pass the data 56 in this case to the second fragment. And similarly, the same code of navigation.find nav controller view dot navigate. And earlier we were just finding, just putting the action ID. Now we are putting the action and passing the data to. Uh, Directions class are generated for all those files which have destinations attached to them. And in this case, both the fragments have destinations attached. So both the files are generated. So similarly, in second fragment, we receive that data using safe args. So in args variable, we get it using the navargs lazy implementation. It can also be done by second fragment args dot from bundle, the basic way, and we save that number in my number and args dot number. So this number is the ID of the argument, and then we put it to the text view, and again the same operation of clicking on which we'll go back to the first fragment. So if you run this code, what you'll see is 56 is being passed to the second fragment, and this is how you send data using safeargs. So a better use case would be, and a real time use case would be a navigation rod or a bottom navigation. So I'll show you guys a demo of navigation rod, in which we'll have to make a new activity of with the drawer layout as the root layout. So let's look at the XML file of that drawer layout. Uh, the above code is same as the previous one, the fragment one. And next we have the navigation view, the normal navigation view. It basically represents the drawer menu. There we have the menu, which I have already made a drawer menu that has first fragment and second fragment in it. And we have given the ID navigation view. So let's look at the Kotlin file of it. So this is the Kotlin file. Let's break this code. So I'll explain one by one. So three things you need to note here is first is the find nav controller, which is the basic one. We attach it to the view and control it using the nav controller. Second is setup with nav controller. So what happens is we have to attach the navigation view to a controller so that it helps in navigation. What will happen is we'll have to send the nav controller in this as a parameter. This setup with nav controller, and this gets associated with the navigation view. This navigation view is the ID of the navigation view in the XML file. Next, we have the app bar configuration, which takes the graph and view as parameters, and this declares that in this case, we'll have to set up the action bar with the navigation controller because we're going to change the titles and everything. So next, we use the navigation controller object and call the function add on destination change listener. So what we are doing here is we are checking if the destination is first fragment. This first fragment should match the ID of the first fragment. So if the destination is first fragment, we'll put the title as first fragment, and similarly, if it's the second fragment, we'll put the action as second fragment. So this is how you implement the navigation drawer, but it won't be working until you override this function on support navigate up. So what exactly it is? It comes from app compat activity, and you should override this method in the same activity where you have defined your nav host fragment. App compat activity and navigation UI are two independent components. So you override this method in order to connect the two. And then when you put this code, return nav controller.navigate up and this app bar configuration object, which has the graph and view attached to it, the navigation drawer will work. And that's how you implement the navigation drawer using navigation components. So things not covered in these 15 minutes were deep linking. It's really simple. You just need to add the deep link tag with one parameter UI, URI, and set it as a parameter. Similarly, like the way you added argument, you add it as deep link, and just the way we passed it using bundle as a second parameter, we pass the deep link URI with the navigate function. And next is connecting view model with navigation components. So there are many things which we can do while using navigation components with view models. And similarly for navigation components and modularization of code, we had a talk yesterday on this. So you guys have must seen that, or just check the site. You will be able to know. And that's it from my side. These are my handles which you can connect with me, from which you can connect with me, and let's connect and share knowledge. That's it from my side. Yeah, so we have this question. Navigation component replace the fragment. This vanish the state of fragment. How can we retain fragment state when we use navigation component? So I was referring to the Google Docs yesterday only, and they have made an API for this, in which they have declared certain APIs with which you can actually get the previous fragments which you had entered. So that I guess will be covered. Like this question will be covered with that API. You can refer to that API. It's just declared yesterday or day before yesterday, and with the latest version of navigation components, we can use that. How to use safeargs with custom type of object? As I said, so there are three parameters: ID name and default value, ID type and default value. So ID is the ID which we use. Type, we have custom types. We have the primitive data types also. So if you declare your data class as the type, we can use safeargs for that and pass it as a, like for example, I use the example of money. We can pass that using safeargs. How to use navigation components for nested fragments like structure or single activity architecture. This was a single activity architecture example, uh, which I showed, and like that's how we use navigation components. It basically is used to replace what the fragment was earlier. And similarly, like we can have activities as destinations too, but the main is for fragments. I guess that's all the questions we have. Yeah. Thank you, guys.